What's up, guys? You know what's really funny is the hardest part about filming videos that have to do stories for me is starting them. Like, I know the story I want to tell, I know what I want to say, but like to get into it, how do you do that? I don't know. But basically today we're going to be talking about something that happened when I was growing up and it was terrifying. So I kind of grew up in this area that I would call maybe like high, low class, or like low middle class. I don't know exactly how to coin it, but where I grew up was very like country. So we didn't have like city ghettos or anything like that, so I don't know really how to compare it. But essentially, if you guys have heard of like trailer trash, we grew up in an area that was like a step above that. Like, instead of being in like trailer park trash, we grew up kind of on this street that had like a cul-de-sac on one end, and it had these like lots of property, and they were 1 acre lots each, and people would put mobile homes on them. So it was kind of like these roads of mobile homes, and more of a, you know, lower class vibe than middle class vibe to it, but not trailer trash, if that makes sense. And the reason that I'm like bringing up like the class type area at all is to kind of give you guys a vibe of like where I grew up, because it wasn't an area that was like super sketchy, super scary, or like anything like that, but it also didn't have like a comfortable like family environment and feel where everything always felt safe. Like, there were some characters that would walk down the road or ride their bikes down the road that would be sketchy. There would be people who would do drug deals in the bushes like down the road from us. It also, like, the road kind of butted up to, there was like this cul-de-sac at this end, and there weren't any houses on it yet, so it was just like vacant property, and behind that was like behind a shopping center, if that makes sense. So it went like shopping center, vacant lots, road, my house is down here. And so sometimes my friends and I would even like ride our bikes and go ride around in the vacant lots behind the shopping center area. But essentially, for some reason, I don't know if this is in all towns, but in different towns that I've lived in, behind the shopping center area is kind of where a lot of like homeless people live. And I don't know if that's because it's easy to like walk out to the front of the shopping center and beg for money, or I don't know exactly how that all works. But it was kind of an area where transient type people would hang out in the day and at night. So if we wanted to like walk to the shopping center or something, my mom would give us like pepper spray and be like, here's how you use it, be careful. And like, we have to ride our bikes, we weren't allowed to walk because bikes are faster. So, you know, there were like sketchy areas near where I lived, but it wasn't like where I lived was like super scary, okay? So in addition to that, the actual mobile home we lived in only had 2 bedrooms, and there were 6 of us total. So it really wasn't like we each had our own space. But there was an additional room, and it was a sunroom, and my mom had really wanted a sunroom when they got the mobile home, so they got this room. And how the sunroom was set up is that one wall was completely like cupboards to store stuff. So besides the wall of cabinets, the other 2 open walls had 3 windows each, and they were like long but skinny. So it'd be like long skinny window, and then a little space, and then another long skinny window. So there'd be 3 of those, and then the other wall had 3 as well. And then there was no like doors or even like front wall entryway. It was kind of just a room that was part of like the dining room area. So when my parents finally converted this other sunroom into a bedroom, they put the beds against the walls that had windows so that they wouldn't block the cabinets, right? And like, you can't put a bed on a wall that doesn't exist because there was no other wall. That was it. So there's a bunk bed on one side, and on the other side there's just a single twin. And one night, I don't know why, we were all sleeping in this room. Now, I don't know how I ended up so spoiled, but I somehow managed to have the other bedroom for myself. Like, it was my room. I think it's because I'm so much older than everybody else. Like, I was like almost 5 by the time my other sister came along, so I somehow got that bedroom, and then my 3 other siblings had to be packed together in this sunroom for quite some time. But on this particular night, I was sleeping in the sunroom with them, and I was on the bottom bunk. My 2 sisters were on the top bunk. My brother was in the twin bed, and my mom was in the twin bed with my brother, who was a baby at that time, like infant. And like I said, I really don't remember why we were all in that room that night, but we were. And it might have been because my mom used to read us to sleep, so sometimes I would go in with my siblings and listen to the story, and they would fall asleep, and I would get up and go to my room. Or a lot of times I would just sleep where I fell asleep. We didn't really have like strict like, oh, you sleep in your room, or, you know, like stuff like that. It was kind of just like whatever. So one thing that I didn't mention earlier too is that on the wall of cabinets, there's this area where we put a fish tank, and the fish tank had this blue light that wasn't like super bright, but it was bright enough that you could see everything at night. You know what I mean? Like, pretty much any light is bright enough for that. It was almost like a night light. So this one night that we are all sleeping in there together, I hear this noise in the middle of the night that kind of wakes me up. And at first I didn't realize that the noise is what woke me up. And then I started hearing this like weird, it was a weird noise. It was like a tap, but a muffled tap. And it wasn't like a regular tap. It was very, very like irregularly paced. So when I finally woke up and started like coming to and like realizing that I was hearing something and that's what had woken me up, I kind of was just like, I wonder what that noise is. But also being a young child, like I don't really want to get out of bed and find out, you know what I mean? So I like just kind of peeked my head out of the bottom bunk, because you know how bunk beds have they're almost like a little cave, like you could drop a blanket over the front and then they're a perfect fort. So I couldn't really see out the foot side of the bed or like the head side of the bed, but I could like slowly wedge myself out and like look out into the room, and because of the blue light I could see kind of everything. So I look out, and what I'm looking at is the twin bed that my mom and my brother were sleeping on, and the 3 windows that go outside, and they didn't have curtains or blinds or anything like that, so they were just open to the outside. Now, in addition to the blue light being inside, we had an outdoor light that was outside, right? And they kind of competed for brightness, so it's hard to say whether it was brighter inside or outside, because the light was on the front porch and this room was like around the side of the house. So it wasn't like direct light on that area, but there was like outside light. So as I peer out of my bed to kind of see if I can tell where the noise is coming from or see what's happening, I notice that the noise seems to be coming from the windows, and the windows were kind of like 1, 2, 3, and this window was closest to the porch light, which was around like this corner, so it gets the most light, right? So as I'm like looking, I noticed that there are hands pressed up against the window, like human hands. There's also a cap. I can tell there's a red baseball cap, and the cap is moving like somebody's looking in and trying to like look around in the house as I'm laying in bed. My first reaction was to like not move and sink back into the bed where he couldn't see me, I couldn't see him. But I had like that foot of empty space between the 2 bunk beds where I could see the very tip of his hat hitting the window and like looking. And so I kept watching that. I was just staring at that, watching it, and I was trying to like gently wake my mom up without him knowing that I was awake. I wasn't really sure what he could see versus like what I could see, because like I said, there was like conflicting lights. So I watched his baseball cap for, I felt like it was literally all night, but it's probably only a few minutes. And then I see that it kind of goes, and I didn't know if he walked somewhere else where I couldn't see him from where I was peering out the little tiny crack between the top and bottom bunk beds, or if he was gone. And so after a much longer period of time, I finally got the courage to peek out and look. And sure enough, he was no longer looking in the window. I don't remember sleeping much that night, but I probably honestly did. And then the next morning when we got up, I told my mom this whole story. I was like, yeah, I saw this guy. I was trying to wake you up gently, quietly, so he didn't know I was awake. And, you know, I told her the whole thing, and she was just kind of like, like, you have a big imagination. That's cute. But also kind of like asking me questions. Like, she kind of believed me, but kind of didn't. That was the vibe I got. And so we did, you know, went about our day. And later in the day, probably like 3, 4 in the afternoon, sometime like that, we went outside, and her car windows had been broken. The car windows had been broken in so hard that there was like no window left. Now, if any of you guys have ever had an experience with car windows breaking, like a car accident, I don't want to trigger anybody. Literally, I had a car accident recently, and by recently I mean 2 years ago, where I still, every time we start slowing down really fast, I'm like, is anybody gonna rear end us? Because it was a rear-ended accident. But yeah, if you've ever been in a car accident where the glass is like fallen into the car because something hit you so hard, that is what the glass was. It was inside the actual vehicle. So it had been hit really hard. So my mom called the cops. The cops came out, they looked at the car, and they had her kind of like go through the car to see if anything was missing, which nothing was missing. So that was like extra weird, because like, why break the car windows if you're not going to take anything? And then additionally, it was weird that none of us heard the car windows being broken into. Kind of odd. While the cop was there, we told him about like me seeing this guy at night looking in our windows, and he's like, well, maybe he was like casing the place out or seeing if you guys looked like you had drugs or anything, I don't know. And so we were kind of just like, okay, whatever. And then I remember seeing something on the ground, and it was like a yellow color, and I was like, what is that? And so I reached down when my mom and this officer are talking, little 9, 10, 11-year-old me, and I pick up a syringe with the needle still intact by the car, which of course my mom was horrified by. So we put it in like a sharps container, and then we had to like scavenge the driveway for like more sharps, because, you know, you don't want kids playing in sharps. And we did find several other like drug paraphernalia, but nothing else with like needles on it, thankfully. But like a lot of just syringes and like little containers and things all out like around the car. So literally somebody had been, probably more than one person, had been on our property that night doing drugs, breaking things, and looking in our house. Is that not super creepy? So that was definitely another scary experience growing up and another scary story for you guys for Vlogoween. And I hope you guys liked it. If you did, it'd be awesome if you gave it a thumbs up. And of course, you can always subscribe down below and turn that little bell thing on. I guess that's something you're supposed to do. I don't know. Supposedly it sends you notifications. I never get notifications even when I click the bell for other people. So you might just have to like check back. I don't know. So yeah, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.